These are live pictures of Balmoral Castle in Scotland.
We are seeing her procession making its way through the gates.
The Queen departing the castle for the last time.
Her last great journey.
Queen Elizabeth's funeral procession, her coffin draped in the flag of the Royal Standard, bound for the Scottish capital.
That's a group of farmers.
They formed their own Guard of Honour.
Thousands of mourners lining the cobbled streets of Edinburgh's Royal Mile, paying their respect to the late sovereign.
It's been the one constant thing in the whole of our lives, the Queen.
I feel like she'll be memorable and her legacy will be carried out.
Great mother, grandmother, and she did well. Very proud of her.
Her journey will conclude at St Giles Cathedral this evening, where the monarch will lie at rest for one day.
So I couldn't miss the opportunity to say goodbye to her.
Preparations for the Queen's funeral continue across the Commonwealth.
A time where we are grieving and acknowledging the contribution of Queen Elizabeth II as our head of state for 70 years.
The PM under pressure from business groups for calling a public holiday at short notice and for suspending Parliament for 2 weeks.
The idea that we could be debating question time as usual, as if it was business as usual, is, I believe, not correct.
The Prime Minister and the Governor-General fly out on Thursday. The PM set to meet with King Charles over the weekend ahead of the funeral Monday. But for now, the UK continues to commemorate an extraordinary life.
The passing of Queen Elizabeth marks the end of an era. Our nation is in mourning.
The Queen's journey continues tomorrow, her coffin flown to London before lying in state for 4 days at Westminster Hall, where it's expected around 1 million mourners will file past to pay their final respects to the only monarch many have ever known.
I think it's just important to be here, just important to say goodbye. She's been on the throne for a long time.
Well, journalist and royal commentator Claudia Joseph is here with me now. Claudia, yesterday, as we saw the Queen's coffin arrive at St Giles Cathedral, we saw the grief writ large on the faces of 3 of the Queen's children. A lot of people saying they were very shocked by how sad they all looked, but do we sometimes forget that these are people who are mourning the loss of their mother and they're just a family after all?
I think people do tend to forget that across the world because there's so much grief for the Queen herself from the nation, the Commonwealth, the universe, they're grieving in public, which must be so difficult. The other thing, of course, to remember is that the Queen was 73 when she died. So when people die when you're a bit younger, you sort of don't know them as well, but they've had her in their lives their whole life, and it must be heartbreaking for Prince Charles. He's 73 and he's always had his mother.
Yeah, we've seen that move for William and Kate into the roles of Prince and Princess of Wales. They're already very hard-working royals. How will their lives and their roles change with these new titles?
Well, I don't think they're going to change as much as one would expect, because I think they're already stepping up. When the Queen got more elderly, Prince Charles, Prince William and other members of the royal family stepped into the breach. And I think there's a limit to what they can do. They want to take the children to school. They're very conscious of their duty and their roles, but they also want to be a loving family.
With Kate becoming Princess of Wales, of course, the last Princess of Wales was Diana. Do you think she'll take many cues from the way that Diana performed that role?
I think that Kate's carved her own role in life for the last 10 years, and she was very hesitant at the beginning and didn't like speaking in public. She now sort of knows her role. She does a lot of work on early years, on children, on mental health. I think those things will continue because they're important to the nation. They're not political. And I think she'll continue as she is, bringing up her children and doing the causes closest to her heart.
Now, in the last day or so, in fact, it was yesterday afternoon here in London, Prince William put out a statement about the Queen, and just in the last few moments, we've seen Harry put out a statement as well. He talks about how missed the Queen will be, not just for him and for Meghan, but for the entire world, and how infectious her smile was. Do we read anything into them putting out separate statements and perhaps some scrambling to make sure that they're both on equal footing?
No, I don't think so. I think they would have put out statements as brothers before their marriage, but they're now both married. They're putting out statements. The Prince of Wales obviously is a separate role from the Duke of Sussex. So they have separate households, separate staff. I don't think that's telling. What I thought was interesting about both their statements was the fact that obviously they paid gratitude to the Queen, both as a monarch and their grandmother, but also they both echoed the Queen's speeches. So in William's speech, he echoed grief is the price you pay for love. And then Harry echoed his grandmother, saying life is full of partings and meetings. And I thought that was a very nice touch from both of them.
How crazy do you think it's going to get here over the next few days?
I think it's going to get more and more crazy. People are obviously going to want to pay their respects to the monarch once she's laying in state. It's apparently going to be a 5-mile walk and hours of queuing. London's going to be very busy over the next week or so.
Having been a royal commentator for so long, is there something about the royal family or perhaps the Queen herself that might surprise us that you've discovered over the years?
Gosh, that's a very difficult question. I think what strikes me is how human they are. I mean, I think people across the world sort of revere them as maybe one reveres celebrities, but the royal family is a very different game. And we've seen the Queen over the years, have breakfast from a Tupperware container. They're not as grand and celebrity-like as you would expect. They're much more duty-bound and conscientious, and I think that you see that in all sorts of manners. We've seen Kate shopping in Waitrose. We've seen the new Queen consort shopping. In fact, the Queen went shopping in Malta as well in the early days of her marriage. They do have staff, obviously, to supply their every need, but William and Kate live very, very humbly by regal standards or celebrity standards. They don't have a retinue of staff. They have obviously their office staff and a cleaner, but they cook for themselves. I think, they live very much like people of their generation, albeit being regal.
Albeit with a whole lot of jewels to wear as well. Claudia Joseph, great to get your insight. Thanks so much for joining us.